Civilian casualties are mounting after one of the most horrifying attacks yet. Russian bombs hit a maternity ward and children's hospital. Ukrainian President Zelensky called the attack an atrocity. And this morning, top diplomats from Ukraine and Russia met face-to-face to discuss a possible ceasefire. But both foreign ministers left the meeting saying no progress had been made.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris is in Poland as we speak, meeting with that country's president after the U.S. rejected Poland's proposal to send Soviet-era fighter jets to Ukraine amid fears the move would put the U.S. in direct conflict with Russia. Senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell starts us off from Kyiv. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, good morning, George. The mayor of this city now saying as many as half of the residents may well have fled. But of course, as many people head to the west and to safety, there are still hundreds, thousands of people coming into the city who are fleeing the fighting. And as you can probably tell, this used to be a kindergarten, but today the children have gone. It's now a shelter for the elderly who fled the front lines. And this morning, no sign of any kind of breakthrough in those talks between Russia and Ukraine.
This morning, Ukrainian and Russian foreign ministers meeting in Turkey, sitting down face-to-face for the highest-level meeting between the two countries since Russia invaded. But speaking after the meeting, the Ukrainian foreign minister Dmytro Kuleba saying Russia isn't ready for diplomacy, insisting instead on surrender, which Ukraine will never agree to.
I'm ready to continue this engagement with the purpose of ending the war in Ukraine.
The high-stakes meeting coming after one of the most horrific attacks the country's seen. In Mariupol, a Russian airstrike destroying a children's hospital and maternity ward. It's one of the largest Russian airstrikes since they invaded. The force of the blast leaving a crater stories deep. But the hospital was sparsely occupied. Even so, 3 people were killed, 17 wounded. President Zelensky tweeting videos showing the devastation inside the hospital, saying the attack is an atrocity and that people, children, were under the rubble. Pointing to the attack, Vladimir Klitschko, former world heavyweight boxing champion and brother of Kyiv's mayor, calling for Putin to be stopped.
To attack children is to attack life. Civilization itself.
Mariupol was supposed to be under a ceasefire, where civilians were to be allowed to evacuate. But the city's been under a total siege for days, and attempts to rescue people have continually failed. All over the country, thousands are attempting to leave cities where fragile ceasefires exist again this morning. But these safe corridors have been repeatedly violated by the Russian military. Ukrainian officials say the only place a substantial evacuation has happened is the city of Sumy near the Russian border, where an estimated 20,000 people were able to flee. This morning, Vice President Harris meeting with the Polish Prime Minister.
I am here to reaffirm our commitment, the United States commitment to Poland and our NATO allies.
The US rejecting a Polish plan to transfer Soviet-era fighter jets to a US base in Germany and then transfer them to the Ukrainian military, an action the Pentagon fears may be mistaken as escalatory by the Kremlin. And the White House now with a warning saying we should all be on the lookout for Russia to possibly use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine, citing Russia's own false claims that the US and Ukraine are preparing chemical weapons of their own. In Kyiv, we went inside a hospital that's been treating soldiers and civilians since the invasion began. Trauma teams now working round the clock.
We just had a report that there's been a mass casualty event. We're seeing people being brought in. Possibly it was a humanitarian corridor that was hit. We're not entirely clear at the moment, but there's suddenly been a burst of activity.
All of the injured we saw brought in were civilians. Ludmila Karpachova was running for cover in her hometown of Chernihiv when she was hit with multiple shrapnel injuries. The hospital removed most of it, but one piece is still lodged in her spine. She says when the bombing started, we began to run. I thought there'd be less bombing, and then they began to bomb everything, the whole district.
Well, it's now thought that there are anything between 3,500 and 6,000 Russian soldiers who've been killed in just over 2 weeks of this conflict, which is an astonishingly high number for one of the world's most powerful militaries. And perhaps it explains this change in tactics by Vladimir Putin. More large-scale, indiscriminate bombing, and of course, that's leading to ever more civilian casualties. TJ.
All right, Ian, tell us what's going on with the folks still there in Ukraine. Thank you.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here. to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.